that the system seeks to cure. And the other one, we talked about the securitization of the 7 shilling that is aiming to raise the said 175 billion that is estimated to be achieved. I would wish to know under what period do we look at this? And is this form of bond in the government record of debts? And if that is the case, how are you treating it in the fiscal framework? Thank you.
Chair Tamaria.
Thank you, Chair. I have only one question, Chair. And Waziri, that is on the expenditure reforms. On your expenditure reform, which you have said that improvement of this expenditure is effective in the public expenditure the government will. I was expecting there is in January this year there is state corporations which has been reduced from 42 to 20 because of overlapping functions of the state corporations. And I don't see it as, you have not highlighted it as one of the expenditure measures of controlling the expenditure reforms. Does it mean it has not been effectively? Or because that reform is done in this 2020 January this year, supposed to be this year effective, this year 2025, 2026. Why is it not in your expenditure reforms?
Okay, finally, Waziri, the reason why I wanted to stop you at that point is because these inputs on debt, it's a lot, and it's going to form the bulk. So just going to the PFM amendment, then in line with the Section 2C, 2B, Treasury will then be required to amend the debt sustainability analysis table so that it's reflective of the reality of the bill that we seek to do when you look at the 5-year term. Okay? Proceed to answer the questions in the order it was asked.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much for your time again. I will first start with Senator Nyakur. Okenyuri.
Yes,
Esther. I think Esther is easier. Going forward, you will be Esther. Yeah, because otherwise I will be struggling and murdering your name. Effects of supplementary budgets. Yes, this is a challenge. This is a problem that this country has been grappling with, that we do a budget and in the process or in the course of the year, we revise it multiple times. And revising budgets multiple times is not a bad idea in itself, but revising it for 2 reasons. 1, additional expenditure pressures, and 2, unrealistic revenue that end up not being collected. So KRA failing to meet the targets. So, but you can see and you'll agree that from 2022, or let me start with 2021-2022, there has been some efforts. 2020-2021, the budget deficit was at 8.1%. It came down to 6.2%. But from 2022 coming to now, the budget deficit has been going down. 6.2, 5.6, 5.3. I think last financial year we'll finally land at about 5%. And then we are intending to move to at least 4.8. Now, that is what we are projecting, that going forward should go up to 2.7. But what did we do to curb against possibility of again raising the budget deficit in the course of the year? This year, our revenue was revised drastically downwards from the initial 2.9, actually 3.018 trillion downwards to now what we have in the final figures of 2.757 trillion. That is a huge reduction of almost 400 billion shillings. And for the first time, the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Office, had a higher revenue projection than the National Treasury. And so to us, we wanted to start, because the moment you over-project revenue, you're clearly giving people appetite to spend what we don't have. And so that is one strategy. The second strategy is now for the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, who is myself, to now contain the expenditure pressures, together with the entire executive. I'm happy that the executive is alive to the fact that we don't have the luxury. From the top, the head of state, the head of government, he knows and he talks about it to the cabinet every day, that we don't want unnecessary expenditure pressures. We have dealt with some, like the CBA implementation for teachers. Fortunately, last year we did quite a bit with the other civil servants, especially the disciplined forces. So we don't have that pressure this year. There would be pressure of security. We hope there will be no much insecurity in most of the sections of this country. Whenever we have those insecurity situations, you have to intervene. I'm also praying that the weather gets the way it is or gets better, so that we don't have issues with feeding our people, which is again another area you cannot run away from, just because you want to have that fiscal discipline. So with that, I would be able to resist any other pressures coming to me on Article 223 and the rest. Let me move to MDS. Yes.
Chair, through
yes.
Chair,
yes.
Before you move through Chair, in your earlier submissions, you talked about the issues of the bonds. And
I want him to finish with Esther's.
My apologies. Yeah. Proceed.
I could finish, then the Vice Chair can raise. Now, on the MDS...
Waziri,
yes.
I want to request the senators, let him finish the response to the questions asked. If there's any follow-up, you can ask, but so that we can exhaust, we don't do back and forth. Proceed.
Sorry, Chair. On MDS preparing the budget, zero-based budget, we did it. We have implemented this for the first time. 2025-26, we did the budget under zero-based budget. It was not perfect because, when you are doing something for the first time, there are a lot of complications, misunderstanding. But I will tell you that we had onboarded, if missed, the zero-based budget. And so going forward, it's going to be improved and become better. But we have started the zero-based budgeting. E-procurement, what specific leakages to be dealt with, or what do we expect to realize from this? You see, the way we have been procuring our goods in this country has been open to abuse, because it is purely manual. It is to an extent guesswork. In fact, even our procurement laws allow a lot of space, because we started saying the lowest bidder, then we moved lowest evaluated bidder, and all this kind of terminology, or the most responsive bidder. Then we have, so you find people carrying cartons or papers, submitting, and then all of a sudden you are the lowest, you are the most competitive, but you are told you did not attach KRAP. That alone knocks you out. You move to the next, who probably quoted even 20-30% more than you, and it is deliberate. Now, what we are saying, if you do it through the system, those will be eliminated, and it will be real time. Everybody is putting their information in there, and everyone is seeing it. And now you cannot come again and say that probably Senator, the chairman here, did not attach ETC, and yet it can be seen in the system. Even evaluation will be done in the system, or being done in the system. And this we said from July 1st. So anybody who fails to procure through the system will not be paid. The payment will not be made. I know it has caused a lot of disquiet, and that is what we expected. And this is likely to save us a lot in terms of procurement, because this is one area which has been identified actually as the source of our loss of public funds. And you will agree, if you have been in this country, and I know all of us have been around, even if you are not doing business, just talk to business people. It has reached a point in this country where genuine businesses cannot even win tenders. You hear that for you to win a tender, you have to know somebody somewhere, or you have to influence the same. That we must cure that problem. And I'm very happy. In fact, if there is any system that I fought so hard to make sure that it goes through, immediately I went to the Treasury. I found this process on. But the challenges that were there, I made sure I unlocked them, including providing 560 million to kick it off. And I actually, this is the first, I think, Article 223, the fund that I gave through Article 223. This is the first one. And I think I'm very proud of it. Now, on securitization, is it in the GOK debts? Of course, it is. It must be in our books. But, you know, you can finance an expenditure in two ways, on budget and off budget. This one is an off budget financing. It is not a loan. What we are saying is you are selling a right. And by the way, those of us who are accountants, we know you can sell a right. You can sell an asset. You can receive receivables in advance. And that is what we are doing with this securitization money. I've had people say, what after you have securitized? So what else will you securitize to make sure that the work continues? We are saying this, that the moment you securitize and sort out the historical bills, we don't intend to again continue incurring those historical bills. We should now be budgeting properly and paying contractors when the certificates.
Yes, our point of concern is public visibility of the same process you're doing, so that the information you're sharing is in public purview in terms of a document on government, you know, that even the off-budget financing need to have public awareness in terms of access to information, so that the noble intent of trying to offset the aged liabilities and making sure the contractors finish the work they were given and return them back needs to be a bit accessible in terms of public information, and that's the part he was coming from.
Yeah, but I think also, Chair, there's been some good communication on this matter, and I don't think we are hiding any information. In fact, even committees of Parliament can ask the Ministry of Roads, State Department for Roads, or even National Treasury. We can even appear collectively and explain what is this that we have done. And by the way, but you know, Chair, the honorable members here, and especially sitting in Finance Committee, you know the sensitivity sometimes of these transactions. There are things that you cannot do when the lead arranger is trying to get the fund. Because if you politicize an exercise like this beforehand, clearly you may end up even borrowing now at 20%. Or, I mean, getting the money or the funding at 20%. The market, capital market is usually very fluid. And with sometimes the kind of politics we play, if we bring it in here, it would distort the whole thing. But now, where we are, that is why even Eurobond, sometimes we get very careful. There is information that we give before, there is information that we have just to give when the transaction is concluded. Because if you give too much information ahead, even to the investors themselves, before the roadshow, if you give too much information, you distort the market. So we are, but all the information on this securitization is available. And if I'm invited to speak to it anytime, I would do that. If my colleague Churchill, who has this information, he has every information about this, and he would come and appear and explain to you this account, the OC account, that collection account. You'd explain the SPV. You'd explain the lead arranger, which was the TDB. He would tell you about how much you have raised so far, how much we have disbursed. Yeah? We have paid all contractors who are owed by the government, all road contractors, up to 50 million. We don't have their debts, 100% paid. But anybody beyond 50 million, any contractor, 40%, and we are going to do 50% in the next 3 weeks. I mean, another 40% to make it 80. And then by November, we want to clear paying all those contractors so that the road construction resumes. I think you asked about the fiscal framework. So I have said this is off budget, so it is not coming in our fiscal framework as a debt, because it is not a debt. On Senator Omar, again, SOEs, I think I included under strengthening public finance management. I didn't put it as under expenditure reforms, but I talked about government-owned entities. By the way, there will be a lot of savings, but we have not concluded the exercise. The exercise is slower than we thought, but we are moving. Some of these SOEs were being collapsed, some were merged, some are going to be dissolved, and some are being declassified. Like you find some professional associations classified as parastatals. We are declassifying that. So the process is still ongoing. That's why I can't give the definite figures of how much we are saving. But I'm happy that something that we have been talking about for long, something is being done this time. Finally, on the state-owned enterprises, we are coming up with a government-owned enterprises bill, GOE, which is targeting specifically about 60 parastatals that are commercial by nature, so that their management is changed. Yeah, with currently even commercially viable state-owned enterprises, we are managing them like they are non-commercial viable. State-owned enterprises, where even appointments to the boards is political. If I lose my seat today, you lose your seat today. We look for you somewhere and we put you there. And not that you don't have the capacity, but should it be the only decision in forming membership of a board? No. So we are coming up with government-owned enterprises bill, which will come to the Senate, and this bill will now reform the management of the state-owned, commercially viable state-owned enterprises, where even appointment to the boards will be competitively done. And National Treasury, being the shareholder on behalf of the people of Kenya, will now be the one. You don't have a situation where the line ministry appoints board members, Kadha, then National Treasury has some board members. They will be centralized under National Treasury, but the appointment and it will be a competitive process, and will be opening up these government-owned enterprises to private investment and private ideas, as we said about Safaricom and the rest. Let me leave it there, Chair. But Chair, I wanted just to point out that so that this is not lost. We have been doing something to reduce this debt anchor. I know you told me not to respond to Senator Onyonka, but he made a serious allegation like we are stuck. Either we are stuck or rolling back. I mentioned that around 2022.
Yes.
Yeah.
The information you've already shared is with the committee.
Yeah.
There are certain inputs that are playing to public gallery. We want to maintain objectivity. I don't want you to respond to it because I've already directed that it is removed off the answer. There's just one follow-up question before I allow you to progress with the other issue.
Thank you, Chair, and that's why we always need this. Yes, you see, you have a lot of information that is very critical. Just to write on what Senator AC had asked you earlier as far as the issue of this procurement system is concerned, just a comment. You need to ensure that there's a lot of awareness about it. We just got to know about it last week, but when the PPRA DG appeared before this committee in terms of the E-procurement system, Kenyans need to know that is the way. And what you also mentioned about the pension E-system, put so much awareness for Kenyans to know that is the way to go. You have a lot that is just within you. That's why your office and your team needs to see how to bring it out. My question, I wanted to narrow it to what you said earlier, Waziri, in terms of the bonds. We have Telanta Hela bond at 45 billion. RMLF securitization. And my concern is on reporting into the books, because as we speak currently, that has not been done. These are contingent liabilities, and we know very well that contingent liabilities are debts. What is your plan, and what are the risks of not even reporting this to books? Because when I had you make a response when you responded to Senator AC, you talked about that they must be, but you have not done that. Why? And also the cost in terms of the period for this particular bond.
Chair, I hear the concern of Senator Tabitha, the Vice Chair, very well. On well, there is quite a number of securitizations that are lined up. The one that has gone far ahead at 2 now, is the one for the RMLF, and this one of the Talanta, or rather the one for sports, the sports fund, which I would also tell you again that the sports fund, Chair, has been with us for so many years. What has it done? I will just, you all know that the last stadium that was built in this country is Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, by President Moi, much as we want to demonize that regime. But it is the only one that did 2 national stadia of international standards in this country. We are doing the 3rd now, the Talanta Stadium. So during President Kibaki's time, with all economic management that people praise, not even a single one. Uhuru's 10 years, not even a single one. Yet we have had this sports fund now for a while. Because when you get to the ground, you'll find an MP has gone and agreed to do 50 million in some corner somewhere. That if that 50 million was utilized properly, you would understand. But sometimes it's only used to put a shade in some school field. So we are saying, why can't we use these monies better? We are raising the money. But I want to just correct something. That this is not a loan, neither is it a contingent liability loan. Why? We are creating a special purpose vehicle and selling the right to this vehicle.
It's not a loan, but it's revenue from government. How do you report that? My concern is on how you are reporting it.
Yeah. So I will tell you that I will tell you the reporting, but I was saying, you know, the contingent liability, the liability is sold completely to the special purpose vehicle. That is now the difference between this and a loan or a guarantee. The government is not guaranteeing. What the government is saying, we are selling the right. Once you sell the rights, you have no rights. And you sell the rights and sell the risk. So the risk is sold to SPV. There is no time that if this money is not paid, then now, because there are people who will come and buy this bond, okay? The people who buy this bond, the liability has been, everything else, the risk has been sold to the SPV. So there is nothing that again differs back to government. But in terms of reporting, I will tell you this.
What she's saying is there's some proceeds either way. You know, the objective is to raise money. Right?
Yes.
The concern is how do you capture this for purpose of public information, you know, in terms of reporting. So now continue with it.
We actually will be reporting the annual debts. Yeah, will always be reported. We will always give you these figures, including contingent liabilities. If I may go to that part of the contingent liabilities, including even those that are related to PPPs, because there are contingent liabilities. So there is a reporting that we do every year, and if you go to our system, our website, you will get it. Even this securitization, it is not lost. By the way, I would even report to you today that the collection account, because we haven't issued the bonds yet. If you go to the OC account, the collection account, where the 7 shillings goes today, it has 21 billion shillings in that account. And it is there for Kenyans to see. This 21 billion, up to 20th of June, it was 21 billion. This 21 billion, sorry, someone is talking. I might had my own things. So, you see, the 21 billion is not even paying the debt. It's available for us. And there are roads that have already been lined up, most of them in Nairobi, the eastern side of Nairobi. We are going to do those roads. Look at this road, the expressway here. This expressway, Up, we are enjoying. Down is chaos.
I think, Waziri,
Let me
I
just-
appreciate you are a very good politician and a very good administrator at the same time. No, I want you to stick to the administration part of it. Let's not divert the question that I'd asked you, because my concern is in regards to reporting, and that has not been done. For these two bonds, that has not been done. In terms of trying to explain the importance of these funds, in terms of building these stadiums, in terms of expressway and all that, that is okay, that is fine. I just wanted you to narrow as to why this is public money, this is public revenue. It needs to be reported. And the discussion we are having today here is in regards to that. We just need to just be on the same page on that.
But you see, Senator, maybe I was not getting you clearly. I was just trying to find out what exactly could be the miscommunication. You see, Senator, there's this collection account. It's still a government account. Okay? And again, all these reports, the public debt, liability, where we have contingent liabilities, by 30th of September, we have a responsibility to report. And we will report. We'll bring all these reports.
You will, but you have not.
But September, we still have days. Do you want me to bring it earlier, Senator? We can try to work and beat the deadline. Maybe if you want it by July, interim report, we will. But September 30th, we will. We are required, by the way, by law to report. So all these reports will come out. Yes. Okay. Now I'm happy that now I have understood you. Yes. I was struggling.
You just stated something, but
Yes.
you've understood our finally.
Very well, yes. So, Chair, do I move forward because time? I think is,
Yeah, you go to
page 9?
number 20.
Yeah.
Public debt stock in Kenya.
Yes, yes. So here, Honorable Chairperson, the stock of public debt as at the end of April 2025.
The delay in response has invalidated that date. Now you can move it to 30th of June 2025. And just share with us, but at that point in time, we can start and thereafter we can get an update.
There may be some slight adjustment, but the figure that I have is up to 30th of April.
That's okay. If that other you can give
We can adjust a little, maybe bring it as an addendum. But, Honorable Chairperson, the status of public debt was 11.49 trillion, which is 66.9% of GDP as at the end of April. But in present value terms, it's 63.8% of GDP. So I think that clarity also needs to come about, and that was already provided in some table. If you check the table that we provided earlier. Now, the public debt comprises of domestic debt is now higher than the external debt. It has always been higher, but is now slightly higher than it has been in terms of percentages. It is 6.16 trillion in terms of domestic debt. External debt is at 5.33 trillion. External debt, as at the end of April, was composed of, out of that 5.33 trillion, 2.94 trillion is multilateral debt, which accounts for 55.26% of our total external debt. And World Bank alone, which is the single largest multilateral lender to Kenya, is at 1.86 trillion, which is 63% of the multilateral debt. So multilateral debt is the highest at 55%. But you know, multilateral is the cheapest debt. So we need even to have more, higher percentage. In terms of bilateral debts, we have 1.1 trillion as at end of April, which is 21% of the total external debt, of which China alone accounts for 652 billion shillings, or 0.652 trillion, which is 59.45% of bilateral debt. And then we have 1.29 in commercial debt, which is usually the most expensive, making up about 24% of our total external debt. with Eurobonds constituting 970 billion shillings, or 75.57% of the commercial debt. So that is where we are in terms of external debt. Still having quite a bit in external. Actually, our biggest management of our liability is to get less and lesser on commercial debt. Yeah. On domestic front, out of the 6.16 trillion, 5.02 trillion is in Treasury bond, which represents 81%. That is a long-term bonds, and Treasury bills make 0.95 trillion, or 15.3%. But a small amount of about 190 billion is in other domestic debt, and which includes overdraft from Central Bank of Kenya. You know, we have that facility. And of course, there's this IMF funds on lend to government and bank advances. So we don't treat this IMF funds on lend to government as external debt. We treat it as a domestic debt. And then also some bank advances. So those are the amounts that we owe in terms of numbers as at the end of April 2025.
Waziri, did you say you're treating IMF as domestic?
No, there's the facility that we call funds on lend to government. There are funds that ndugu wewe ndio unadili na hiyo. Utamwambia why this is.
Maybe Director Doro can explain better, but officially the funds were borrowed by CBK, and then they all lent to Kenya, to the government in Kenya shillings.
Okay.
That's what the reason is domestic. But Doro maybe can explain better.
Dolo, you can introduce yourself first, because you are not here when we introduce it, and then you go ahead to explain why that bit is treated as a domestic debt.
My name is Daniel Ndolo, Director Debt Policy, National Treasury. When we had turbulences in the external sector, that is balance of payments, imbalances, the IMF lent to Kenya through the central bank. Of course, it is a drawdown on the quota Kenya owns in the IMF capital structure, and once it comes to the central bank to support foreign exchange reserves, the shillings equivalent was on lend. Initially it was 80 billion in total, 80 billion Kenyan shillings, and then it was on lend to government, because at the end of the day the central bank will have to pay, but central bank did not need to spend the money as an entity. So the money was on lent to the National Treasury to support the fiscal requirements, and in Kenya shillings. So the debt owed by Treasury to central bank, in our books, it is in Kenya shilling. It is a central bank which have that debt in SDR equivalent in hard currency. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe there's also some aspect of monetary policy in terms of management of the market. Now, I know we are running out of time, but I want you to go straight to, for the other issues, we will submit your written submissions as you shared. But I want you to pronounce yourself on record on the issue of Equalization Fund liability. And before I say that, by the way, Honorable CS, we engaged with the Equalization Fund board through the CEO. And last year we said this committee, which is the primary oversight committee of devolved functions, and as well as also Equalization Fund to county government, that we need to get a regular report of implementation of Equalization Fund. The last one we got the last financial year. This year we have one report. We've not received from the Equalization Fund board implementation report the last meeting we've had with your officer, the CEO, was a guidance, because we don't want the Equalization Fund to be in theory, and the Parliament must have visibility in form of oversight. We have not received any report, and we agreed we need to receive quarterly implementation report to keep the implementation of Equalization Fund on track. And we also need to find out, whether from you or from your officer, why that has not happened. But then address yourself to a letter of commitment that was written by your predecessor upon inquiry by the Senate of arrears compliance plan, and that arrears compliance plan has not worked as written to us. We've written to you to get to find out Equalization Fund implementation sunset clause is fast approaching. We have Equalization Fund administration bill that is stuck at the National Assembly for 2 years, while the arrears stand at 39 billion, and even appropriated fund of equalization in 2024-2025 were not credited to Equalization Fund account, except a small portion that happened. So we need to get to find out, because otherwise this becomes an academic exercise when it comes to implementation of Equalization Fund, and the arrears will continue. So can you tell us how Treasury intends to comply with the arrears when the sunset clause is fast approaching? And whether or how do you intend to give the Senate a revised, arrears implementation plan in terms of making do with the arrears that are pending of 39 billion over the coming years, and your commitment to make sure once appropriated, the fund should be credited to Equalization Fund in order to make sure the functions work. Over to you on equalization.
Yes, exactly, yes. On equalization. Yeah. Just to ride on what you've mentioned to the Minister. Waziri, the last time your predecessor was here, as Chair said, I'm just trying to look for that letter. There's a letter, I think that the clerk can just show you, of the commitment he made before this committee as far as the issue of Equalization Fund is concerned. And thank you, Chair. Yeah, kindly, Beverly, just give a copy to Waziri that this is a matter this committee had dispensed fully. And this commitment was done by your predecessor. And it doesn't matter, because still the office has a Waziri. And we would not want to have just commitments as far as this Equalization Fund is concerned, and no money is remitted at all. You've indicated before the committee on how you're going to maximize revenue collection. Why are we still in 2025 discussing Equalization Fund? Simply because a minister appears before this committee, does a commitment on paperwork, but it is never actual. Yet you have a CEO who has a whole team that is running in that particular office. But what are they doing? Why are you providing administration funds to the CEO and his team, and you're not able to provide the funds for them to manage these funds? Chair, submit.
Okay, Honorable C, I think that's sufficient in terms of the questions from the members. You can give us your response for the record. In the rest, we will take your submitted report. If there's any clarification, we'll write back to you for written, addendum for that matter. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just have, before I go to the Equalization Fund, the two bills, I have a few requests, one or two. One, on the audit bill, largely my team has no problem with that bill, and I think the submission is there. The only thing that we may request is that once the Auditor General, because this is largely prepared by the Auditor General, once she makes her submission, you could share her submission with us so that if you have any reaction to them, we would give. So that is so far as the audit bill is concerned. Now, the other one for procurement, we have a request to put across. The Cabinet has approved a complete review and overhaul of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. And we are preparing and going at the moment. We want to even do a robust public participation on that bill, on that law. So we were requesting that this private members bill could be stood over, and the executive brings forward a more comprehensive review of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, if that is agreeable, so that we may end up. There are a lot of changes that have taken place, including e-procurement and all this. We want to capture everything in the law because we feel there are so many gaps. So those are the only the requests that I wanted to put across for the committee to consider. Then I can. And my guarantee would be that we'll engage also on the proposed amendment by the private member to be included in the comprehensive amendment to the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act.
Put that request in writing to the committee, formal, and your commitment with time frame within which you can share the comprehensive, and then we will also formally respond to you so that we can take that out of that. But while you do that, maybe the committee has interacted with the private members, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. An issue of critical concern for all of us, it should be of the same for also the government, is the disposal part of the current act has created prohibitive processes that are extremely bureaucratic, that assets that, for example, government made a decision by presidential decree that vehicles of this CC or that CC should be grounded forthwith, and that happened, and vehicles that are brand new are grounded and kept at public works storage. And instead of doing disposal in time, when the values that to be realized from those vehicles were worth a lot to the government, it was kept in store until the net book value of those assets are zero. Now, you can't shoot yourself in the foot by writing disposal process that is, we fear corruption so much to the sense that the laws that we bring forth are actually becoming excessive detriment to and very costly for us. So can you also, as National Treasury, please address the disposal process? And with automation, all your fears will be addressed, just like procurement. So the procurement system, the new procurement system you have, must be accompanied by relevant laws that explicitly discusses the process and the legislation around it, and also goes further to address the disposal process, and it should happen within the same system so that all fears can be addressed, and government, whether it is at the county level or national level or government-owned entities, do not lose so much, because the laws we've written makes it like 3 years for you to realize, because you have to do A, to do B, to do C. By the time you do that, the net book value of these assets, some of them, particularly machinery and motor vehicle and such other issues, become zero. Even to dispose them of, then you cannot even discuss. Can you then make sure that that also is addressed, and the rest put it in writing? Over to you.
That's noted, Chair. I agree with you. Actually, some of our bureaucratic processes end up achieving the direct opposite of what we intend to achieve. So maybe now I move to address the Equalization Fund. Now, Chair was asked to talk about the status of compliance with the commitment of proposal plan to pay Equalization Fund arrears that was submitted to the Senate through the letter dated 19th of May 2023, written by my predecessor. Background: Equalization Fund is established by Article 204 the Constitution of the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, which requires that 0.5% of all the revenue collected by of Kenya, which requires that 0.5% of all the revenue collected by the national government each year, calculated on the basis of the most recent audited revenue received.
Honorable Waziri, I want you to skip that part of the law, the provisions, the policies, and go straight to how Treasury intends to comply with addressing the issue of arrears of Equalization Fund. And your commitment to credit to Equalization Fund account any appropriated fund of equalization. Just at those two issues.
Thank you. So, Chair, then I'll go to page 2. I'll skip the other ones. So here, entitlements to the Equalization Fund. Honorable Chair, in the first 3 financial years after its establishment, that is 2011 to 2012, 2012-13, and 2013-14, the Equalization Fund had no allocation since the first policy identifying the marginalized areas had not been developed and published. That is not news, I'm sure, Chair. But since inception, that is 2011, 2012 to 2025-2026, the total entitlement to the fund is 80,092,847.94. So it's over 80 billion shillings, which should have gone into this fund, which is calculated based on the provisions of Article 204.1. As of June 30th, 2025, the National Treasury had paid 15.93 billion into the fund out of the 80 billion. The current outstanding amount is 64.162 billion, including the financial year 2025-2026 allocation. So in the financial year 2024-2025, the Division of Revenue Act allocated 7.8 billion, out of which 2.5 billion was paid into the fund, leaving arrears of 5.352 billion. And the table is has been provided there. Now, completion status of projects. So this is the table. The completion status has been provided to the counties. I mean, how the money has been applied in the counties. So let me go to page 6 of my presentation. To facilitate payment of Equalization Fund arrears, the National Treasury, via letter, which I had already indicated, to the Senate dated May 19, 2023, proposed a plan to allocate additional funds annually to the Equalization Fund to clear arrears by allocating 9.976 billion each financial year, to all the way to 2027-2028, which would then have amounted to 39.9 billion as shown in the table. So that
is assuming each financial year the appropriated Equalization Fund is credited to the account.
Yeah, that was assuming that would be over and above the normal, or rather the constitutionally provided allocation. However, Chairman, due to tight fiscal space, the National Treasury has not appropriated the arrears as per the payment plan provided due to the following reasons. One is the commitment that the funds owed to the fund was planned for the 2024-25 financial year. However, you will recall that the Finance Bill 2024 fell flat, which was to raise the 347 billion in intended to help and pay off debt and fund development projects, including the debts owed to the Equalization Fund, was withdrawn after public protests, Chairman. And
I want to stop you there. You know, we're all politicians, and Honorable Waziri, with a lot of respect, it's very shameful if you sit here as a seasoned legislature there are a lot of funds that are appropriated, including county additional allocation, conditional grant, and many other issues. Why don't you just come on record and say the government does not wish to support Equalization Fund and implement Equalization Fund for the record? Because other funds, conditional grants, are remitted with some liabilities. Any flimsy reason is good enough for non-remittance of Equalization Fund to Equalization Fund account. And sincerely speaking, it's a very sad reality. The original intent of the drafters of the Constitution is to address some, deliberate resource denial by successive governments, by policy document of government, and it was believed that to address that situation could not have been a switch on and off. It had to comply with a process of making good with that. Despite the fact that devolution came, this is constitutional requirement. It's grave violation of the Constitution by Treasury or by extension the government, because it's the law. It clearly states it doesn't state subject to other, because you present a budget that should be realistic, ought to be realistic, and is believed to be realistic. Then within that budget, 0.5% is supposed to go to Equalization Fund. Now, if you appear before the committee and you make nice statement of fiscal constraints, you've not been asked by the Constitution. The article clearly states, and you are a legislator. I don't want to engage you on this because it will get a bit embarrassing. Clear to be realistic. All these constraints you will discuss is supposed to have been taken care of by the time you do budgeting. So 0.5% ought to just go as soon as it is appropriated. Now, please, sincerely, with a lot of respect, so I don't refer you to the sections of the articles of the Constitution. Can you tell us when Treasury intends to comply, in simple terms?
Chairman.
And then all these other internal processes, you make the necessary adjustment in budget, as you've just shared. The original estimate of the budget, for example, of the current financial year was about 3 trillion. You had to adjust it downwards, informed by other realities. After you have adjusted, you have to set apart. Estimate of the budget, for example, of the current financial year was about 3 trillion. You had to adjust it downwards, informed by other realities. After you have adjusted, you have to set apart the 0.5. Okay, then it means this 0.5 is within the constraints of all the realities. And immediately it's appropriated, it's supposed to be credited to Equalization Fund account. Tell us how Treasury intends to comply. And kindly, because we are dealing with informed individuals like yourself, avoid other descriptions that will put us in embarrassing setting. Over to you, Waziri.
So, Chair, first let me disclose that I'm one person who believes in this fund, and I very well know that there are areas in this country, Chair, which have been marginalized over the years. In fact, that is why I have a problem with the second formula that is being used in